Tractate Beitzah, welcome everyone. It's one of those tractates that dealing with the beauty of learning and halachot, many practical halachot. I remember I have the privilege to study this tractate only 37 years ago. And at that time, my teacher told me and told other students that we get to do three things: focusing, and focusing. Because this tractate, if you zoom in and focus, you absolutely enjoy the journey of learning. Tractate Beitzah, Beitzah literally meaning egg. There are those who call it Bei'ah. The Vilna Gaon said, don't bother, just call it Beitzah. However, in the rabbinic writing like Tosfot Yom Tov and others, they call it a tractate of Yom Tov, tractate of festival, because this tractate dealing with the law of the festivals, Shavuot, Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, etc. Now, the Tosfot Yom Tov tell us at the beginning of tractate Rosh Hashanah that the reason they put it here is because there is certain order. We study tractate Psachim. Shavuot is not so much to learn, and then you occupy yourself with the Sukkah. The main idea, for sure, there is a lot to introduce, but I want to make it short. We zoom in the parak itself, and then we go back to some definitions. The key point is the Hilchot Muktzeh. Hilchot Muktzeh, meaning, we study it many times, is the idea of something that a person set aside. The whole subject of Muktzeh, set aside, is one of the rabbinic subjects that have a very broad definition. And the Meiri, one of the greatest rabbis, commented on the Talmud, said that he found, guess how many? 54 different definitions of Muktzeh. To remind some of you some of those definitions, we learned in the past Muktzeh mechamat isur, Muktzeh mechamat mi'us, that you don't want to bother with us, Muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis, that's something that you lose money because of that. There are many different Muktzeh. Muktzeh, again, set aside. Now, for the sake of flowing the shiur, let's make a little deal that from now on I'm not going to use the word set aside, but I'm going to use the Hebrew word Muktzeh. So just all remember, when I use the word Muktzeh, meaning something that the person put it and set it aside in advance before the holidays. Now, another important point, there is a disputation among, you see it in the Talmud, but later you see it among the rabbis, if Muktzeh is biblical, the Oraita, or rabbinic. The Gemarrah tells us in Tractate Psachim, page 47, that it's biblical, which is before the holiday, before the Yom Tov, did not prepare it, it wasn't hachana, so therefore it's Muktzeh. However, there are other sources like Tractate Shabbat, like Rashi at the beginning of this tractate, that have an issue with that. So Rashi at the beginning of this tractate still hold that it's biblical, but there are other sources that try to say that it's the whole idea of Muktzeh is rabbinic. Now, the definition of Muktzeh, as we said, is something that set aside. With that in mind, let's go to the first Mishnah. ביצה שנולדה ביום טוב, בית שמאי אומרים תאכל ובית הלל אומרים לא תאכל. Here is a situation that you have an egg. Imagine you live in a farmland and you have this big chick house, and all of a sudden now it's the festival and one of your kids want to eat egg for all kind of reasons, and they pick one of those eggs from chick house and they bring it to you, says Can you warm it up and we want to eat the egg? Is that okay to eat it or not? So what's the question? The question is, you have a chicken. The chicken was designated before the holiday for nothing, right? It's just a chicken, right? Now is a new phenomena. It's called nolad, meaning something that is born. But it's born not because you know in advance it's going to be born and you designated it for your child to eat. It's just born, boom, born. So here you see a disputation between two giant rabbis and their school of studies. What is the definition of muktzeh? Bet Shammai said you can go ahead and eat it during the festival. Bet Hillel said no, you cannot eat it. Later the Gemara explained why. Now, Tosfot elaborate and he said the moment you said no, so you cannot even carry it. The moment you said you cannot eat it, so it's already muktzeh. The moment it's a muktzeh, just the first, and then we're not going to repeat it later. Muktzeh, the moment it's not set aside, it's not designated in advance, it's muktzeh, and you cannot use it. Tosfot, the next one, elaborate, and he said that since we make this disputation between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, you see a new phenomena that Beit Shammai is the machmirim, Beit Shammai is the stringent, and Beit Shammai is the mekilim, the lenient, and Beit Hillel machmirim, which is rare because usually it's the opposite. Now we bring other examples, but the reason that we bring others according to Tosfot is because they follow this principle that Beit Shammai lenient, Beit Hillel stringent. Now, just remember that when the Yom Tov, when the festival is over, then everyone agree that you can go ahead and take that egg and eat it. We are speaking about festival itself. Now, Beit Shammai Omrim, another disputation between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Seor bichezait v'chametz bichtoteret. So, seor, the Torah forbids that we're getting close to the festival of Pesach, to eat any type of leavened bread. What is the minimum amount that a person is forbidden to eat? So Beit Shammai said the minimum that a person is in violation of Torah law in Passover is the amount of olive bark. So, meaning that if you eat something that is chametz below than that, you're not in violation. Okay, so seor is that amount, kezait, olive bark, vechametz bechtotevet. So it's the size of the date. ובית הלל אומרים זה וזה בכזית. So בית הלל is more stringent, and they said both, not only seor, also chametz. It's the size of olive bark, which is smaller size. So you see here again another example of Beit Shammai go lenient, Beit Hillel more stringent. Now another point, you see the same manner, which is Beit Shammai lenient and Beit Hillel not. They're dealing with the law of covering the blood during holidays. What happened is, during holidays, unlike Shabbat, if you own, let's say, any type of animal farm, and during the holidays, you all of a sudden have many guests come to your house, and now during the holiday you want to slaughter one of your whatever it is, animal or chicken or whatever it is, and eats it. So you allow, not for the sake of the following day, not on Shabbat, but on holidays, you're allowed to go ahead and slaughter if you do not have other source of food. So again, if this is a festival of Sukkot, or festival of Passover, and you have no other choice but to eat chicken, so for the sake of holiday itself, you're allowed to eat it. Ochel nefesh. Ochel nefesh meaning that's the food you need. Now, even you're allowed to slaughter, you have the obligation, because the Torah is very sensitive over covering the blood, you have the obligation to do what? To cover the blood of leftover. So, even you're allowed to slaughter in order for you to eat it, still you have an issue of covering the blood. What's the issue? Anyone can tell us. What's the issue of covering the blood? We understand that the slaughtering, it's fine, because slaughtering you need it for food. But why you have the issue of covering the blood? What's involved?
Well, you got to dig, and that's could be either planting, or it even could be banana.
Excellent. If you dig, very good, David. If you dig, it's called chafira, and basically it's tolada of boneh, tolada of builder. Another one, they say that it's some type of tochen, some type of grinding, some rabbis said. It's called ktisha. Or you have the tiltul, the carry, that it's an issue of carrying muktzeh. So this is the issue. So they said, "Shochet chayav ha'of b'yom tov." If someone needs, again, not for the following day, not for the party in the next week, for the same day you need food, so you slaughter that for the sake of the holiday. Beit Shammai omrim yachpor bedeker v'yichaseh. So it means you need to take a shovel and do it and cover the blood with the dirt. ובית הלל אומרים לא ישחוט אלא אם כן היה עפר לא מוכן בעוד יום. But there is very stringent. They said, hey, as much as we like you to slaughter it in order for eating it, but since there's other melachot involved here, which are not part of your immediate need for food, so if you did not prepare in advance a dirt to cover all the blood, you cannot do that during the festival. Okay? However, if it's bediavad, if by force of circumstance after the fact it happens, umodim she'im shachat, that if a person already did it, שיחפור בדקר ויחסה. שאפר קירה מוכנו. So he can take something like a local stick and that was set there in advance, and he can cover it. Okay? Later we elaborate on that. Now, we go back to the Mishnah. Before we go to the Gemarrah, I'll go back to the Mishnah and just clarify a few points. We talk about muktzeh, the first machloket, the first disputation in Mishnah, dealing with egg that was born during the festival. At the beginning, we understand that the disputation between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, if the egg is prohibited because of muktzeh. Muktzeh, meaning something that we cannot use it that particular moment. Meaning, if it's, for example, Shabbat, you have a wallet, so for all kind of reasons, sometimes it's just bother you that it's on a table. It's basically muktzeh, you cannot touch it. But after Shabbat is over, for sure you can touch it. The same here. So even just to move it, to carry it, it's muktzeh. You have to ignore it. So muktzeh, it's like you made up your mind that you can't use it. The regular muktzeh, if we talk about chicken, so let's call it by name. Chicken, let's call that chicken A. Chicken A is basically not designated for any purpose. It's just chicken that's running around in your yard. You do not think about anything before the holidays. Or you take a cow. You have a cow outside of your yard. That cow you use for milk. Nothing else. You live in a farmland, that's your designation. So now when the festival occurred, let's say Passover that's coming, or Sukkot, you're thinking about this cow on your yard just to use for milk, period. Meaning in your mind, you didn't have a mindset before the holiday to slaughter that cow for food. Which means it's called muktzeh. it's mufrad, it's muvdal, it's something that you divided, you separate, you don't think about it in advance. Now, the problem is, all of a sudden, now it's a holiday, now you want to slaughter it and eat it. Okay? So we have two different definitions that we must understand. One it's called muktzeh, the other one it's called nolad. Nolad meaning something new created that we didn't know in advance, but it's totally new. So if you have an egg, by definition, that egg was born now. So the big question is, do we match the two definitions, muktzeh and nolad, as one or not? Soon you see that sometimes yes, sometimes not. So we have basically zoom in, since we said in advance that there are many. Here we focus over two different items of muktzeh. Number one, something that it was totally not in this world before the holidays, and you didn't do any hachana, any preparation in advance, not for food, not for use. For example, if you know a little bit farming, there are two different chick houses. There are those chickens that the goal of the farmers is just to have them in the future being slaughtered and served for what? For food. So those chickens are designated solely for what? How do you call it? Chicken that designated just for
food, yeah.
For food, right?
Slaughter.
What?
Or slaughter, yeah.
Slaughter. And they have another kind of chickens that designated just for eggs. It's a two different category. I'm right?
Yes.
So here, what happened before the holidays, that chicken was in a different category. Point one. Point two, it wasn't prepared before the holidays because it wasn't in the world before the holidays. It only happened during the holiday, which is the egg. The egg wasn't here. It's nothing to discuss before the holiday. All of a sudden, it's born. That's called nolad. So now you see, we have two different categories so far. One is called muktzeh, and one is called nolad. So the Gemara zoom in and ask, B'maya skinan, what type of chicken, that brought us an egg, we have here a disputation between Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel. Now, let's think together. If this is in a category, let's call it A. This is a chicken among the group of chicken that designated for what purpose? Just for food. Meaning, they raise those chickens just for food. Sometimes it hurts my feeling, by the way, to watch how they put those injections to make them fat and the truth is I'm almost totally vegetarian sometimes, as you know me, because when you watch, I have argument once with my middle daughter over a hot dog and things like that. So I said to her, you know what, I'm going to take you to one of those places that they slaughtering them, and if then you want to eat it, go and do it. So that's one category. You have chicken. I'm not talking about farm chicken that you use for whole food, that it's very healthy and they raise them properly. You know, others. So you raise it for the purpose of eating it. Meanwhile, it can happen that chicken have an egg. But so far, you have in your mind, Shita Mekubetzet said that you can eat it at any time, because that's the purpose of eating it. What do you think? That chicken is a muktzeh or not a muktzeh? Obviously, it's not. Why? Because you have in your mind before the holidays that if I'm hungry and I need food for the holidays, those chickens are designated for food. So I'm going ahead and going to eat it. So it's not a muktzeh issue. We said before, you can slaughter and eat it for the sake of the holidays. So if that's the case, why Beit Hillel prohibited to eat the egg? Because the egg is basically part of the body of the chicken, of the mother, because it's befitting for food and it's within the mother. When the eggs come out, uchla de efratu, What is uchla defra? That's a beautiful definition. You have a food, and you take out the food, and you divide it to another food. So it's all under the category of food. You just have A1 and A2. That it was chicken and the egg, and then the eggs come out of the chicken. So what's the problem? It's not neither muktzeh, not nolad. Everyone remember what is a muktzeh and what's nolad. So please stop me if I'm above your hand. So the Pnei Yoshua elaborated and he said, you cannot tell me that the egg is a muktzeh, because the chicken itself is not a muktzeh. Right? So it's all basically under one category. So what's the problem Beit Hillel have with that they said it's prohibited? Again, let's make sure that we all understand. Beit Shammai said if the egg was born to a chicken that designated for food, it's not a problem. Why? Because it's one category. So now they ask Beit Hillel, why you said I cannot eat the egg? If I designated, if that egg come out of those chickens that was designated for food, so it's designated for food. So what's the difference between the chicken and egg? It's all food.
The egg wasn't there when you made that decision.
Oh, that's called nolad. So the big question is, soon you see that Beit Hillel try to tell us that.
Or at least
That
you
they
can't
try to
see
divide it very good between muktzeh and nolad. But so far we are on a point of challenging Hillel. But then we said it's all food. So why you say that it's not? Since you tell me I cannot eat the chicken, so I don't want to eat the chicken now, I want to eat the egg. So what's the big deal? It's all part of what's called food. Ela, you have to say so far, בתרנגולת העומדת לגדל ביצים. Oh, now you tell me, you know what's the disputation between them? It's the category B. Now you're talking about chickens that I don't have the intent to eat them. I'm going there only because I want the eggs. Oh, therefore, now I go again and ask Beit Shammai. Mai tamar Beit Shammai muktzei. Now I understand why Beit Hillel said it's an issue. But why Beit Shammai said it's fine? It's muktzeh. Why it's muktzeh? As Kat said earlier, because I didn't know in advance over this egg. The egg was not born yet. Because this chicken is not designated for food. So for sure the rabbis have a lot to say about it. But in very short, they tell us something that, just as an act of definition, I want you to understand the mindset of the rabbis, because we will deal with that in the future a lot. Why we have these big discussions? When it's come to holidays or Shabbat, the rabbis want us to have, which called in Ivrit, menuchat hanefesh, which means peace in your mind. Peace in your mind, the rabbis want you to set up everything, to prepare all the food, to prepare all your needs, and you shouldn't think about anything. You should be holy, spiritual. This is a time, no cell phone, no butter, no internet, no nothing. Just focus on the Shabbat and holidays. So the sages come up with the point, with the notion of muktzeh, because they don't want you doing Shabbat, during the holidays, to have to worry about new things. They want you to have peace in mind. So therefore, if they set something aside, they said it's a muktzeh, then you cannot do it on the holidays. So here we said, Umay kushia. What's the big question here? Dilma Beit Shammai let lu muktzeh. Maybe Beit Shammai said that the sages will not go so far with muktzeh, because they hold, since the chicken itself is not the issue, even the chicken was not designated for food. But if you are hungry and you have no other source of food, and it's the holidays, so Beit Shammai said you have no problem. So what's the difference according to them if the chicken was designated for food or designated for egg? So therefore, they hold that the egg, it's a food that come out of food. Again, the chicken is a food that you can eat. The egg is a food that come out of a food. So it's neither muktzeh nor nolad. So Tosfot tells us here that animals have some definition of muktzeh, but the egg is in a way less muktzeh. Kasal kadatin. Afilu man deshare b'muktzeh. You may think even the one who allowed to use muktzeh, which is Rabbi Shimon and Beit Shammai hold the same, trace a situation. You have this chick house for eggs, and all of a sudden, boom, during the holidays, your house packed with people come to visit you. And you need to feed them. So what do? You take some chickens, you slaughter them, you make a barbecue, and you save the people. Okay? Just an example. So this is something that issue, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an issue because
right.
We said ben olad asar. If something it's born new, we have a problem. Why? There is a concept that we studied in the past, but I want to refresh it. It's called migo. What is that migo? We said if you set up your mind before the holidays in one way, meaning before the holidays you do not have any mindset over anything like that. You have a food in a refrigerator, you have the food you're planning to eat, you ignore, totally don't even think about your yard. So we said migo de itkatzai ben hashmashot, the moment that you make it a muktzeh at the twilight, meaning before the time of Shabbat or holidays, itkatzai lekol yumat, so in your mind it's already set aside, it's already something that you don't even think about. And we in rabbinic halachot and writings considering mindset very important. Mm-hmm. What do you have in your mind? So therefore, my tamai Beit Shammai. So how come Beit Shammai allow the egg? Why? Because as we said earlier, that's nolad, that's new one that born. Because you did not know in advance that the mother chicken carried the eggs within her. And therefore you did not have in your mindset in advance to eat the egg independently. You do not have the mindset to slaughter the mother and to eat what it's inside. You don't have all of that. So therefore, if the mother was only designated for eggs, meaning that chicken house mindset was solely for eggs, and a person doesn't know that the eggs will come out of the chicken, so therefore it's called nolad, it's created something new and it's prohibited. Amar Rav Nachman explained the disputation. He said, "Le'olam betarnegolet omed legadel betzim." You have to go now the category B, which is this is not a chicken that thought by any means for food. This was a chickens that stand for solely raised for eggs. They try to match the two pieces together. They try to say those who hold that something is muktzeh, something is set aside, the same applied to something that is newly born, which means that the one who said it prohibited hold that is prohibited, meaning they do not differentiate between something that's set aside and something that is newly born. Beit Shammai Rabbi Shimon or Beit Hillel Rabbi Yehuda. So the Maharsha tells us that basically you have here three categories of nolad. You have the most easy, the most lenient one is nolad, that something was born for the purpose of eggs, which means today this chicken is supposed to have an egg, and Rabbi Shimon said if it's not the issue of muktzeh, it's not the issue of nolad. So now the Gemara challenged that. They said, Umi amar Rav Nachman hachi. It's that true that Rav Nachman hold that Bet Hillel match what Rabbi Yehuda said. Ve'atnan, we learn it already in Tractate Shabbat, page 143. Bet Shammai omrim magbihin me'al hashulchan atzamot uklipin. So Bet Shammai said, if you have the leftover of nut or leftover of those type of fruits, so even animals cannot eat it. Let's say you eat what is called a walnut, nut, and all the different that they have the layer, the heavy layer or the cover, shell, and you don't use it, and animals not even eat it. So the big question is that considering muktzeh? So what do you do with that? So the Bet Shammai said you lifted it from the table, and Beit Hillel said, no, you cannot move it because it's muktzeh. מסלקת הטבלה כולה ומנערה. You take the entire plate, for example, you have a wood plate, and you just shake it, and in that way the shell and the cover or the bond or whatever it is left over will be removed, because again it's under the category of muktzeh. So Tosfot gives us an example. He said, if you have a vessel that was broken during the holidays, so according to Rabbi Shimon, it's not an issue, it's not a muktzeh. Why? Because Rabbi Shimon said that in advance you have this utensil, you have it in advance. The only difference is it was full and now it was broken. So this is something that happened during Yom Tov. Imagine you have, for example, in those days wood vessels, and the vessel was broken during the festival. Now what do you want to do? You want to take that wood pieces and throw it to the fire to heat. Is that okay or not? So Tosfot said to us, מפני שהם רואים לאכל במעל, נראה לי שהם רואים לאכל מה, כל עצמות רכים בקליפי תפוחים. So he said, if it's not befitting for food, human consumption, but for animals, so that's the disputation. Beit Shammai said it's okay, it's not an issue, and Beit Hillel said you cannot move it, you cannot carry it. So ואמר רב נחמן, אנו אין לנו, אלא בית שמאי כרבי יהודה, ובית הלל כרבי שמעון. So he tried to switch the point, and he said, no, here Beit Shammai go stringent, and Beit Hillel follow Rabbi Shimon that it's lenient with muktzeh. So basically now we switch around, and we said that Beit Hillel follow Rabbi Shimon that you can move with your hand the muktzeh from the table, and Beit Shammai said no. So basically if you follow that direction, you're totally in contradiction to what we said earlier, because what we said earlier, Rav Nachman explained the Mishnah that Beit Hillel does not follow Rabbi Yehuda. So we just turn it around. Amar lach Rav Nachman, wait, you cannot juxtapose the two. You know why? Gabei Shabbat, in regard to the halachot of muktzeh, the satam latana ke Rabbi Shimon, because it's a general statement that follow Rabbi Shimon ditnan, we learn in tractate Shabbat, page 156. Mechatchil et adluim lifnei abehema. You have an animal, you want to feed the animal, so what do? You take the dluim, which means something that's already uprooted from the ground. So you may think that it's just tircha, so that you do some type of imposing work that it's not needed. And again, we don't talk about something that you uprooted on Shabbat, but something that we already said, but you need to slice it and put it before the animal. So they said, ואת הנבלה לפני הכלבים. So for example, you have a Cyrus, right? The dog, and you want to feed him. And so what do? You take a dead animal and you put it before the dog. So he said that's not considering a muktzeh. Why? Because before the Shabbat that animal was alive and wasn't befitting for the dogs. Okay? And therefore mukim la lebeit Hillel ki Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Nachman hold the same match Beit Hillel according to Rabbi Shimon, and he hold that following the Mishnah Beit Hillel allow to remove the shell, etc. And therefore, aval bet amud bet 2b, aval gabei Yom Tov, but in regards to the dinim of muktzeh of the festival, the satam latana ki Rabbi Yehuda, because we have a general statement follow Rabbi Yehuda that none, we're going to learn on page 31, ein mevak'in etzin min hakorot. You cannot slice the wood from those pile of wood that, again, if If you look at buildings, the builder puts in the designated location a certain pile of materials they're going to use. So those pile of wood will stand there in advance before the holiday, and it's called under the category of muktzeh mechamat chisaron kis. Why? Because the builder or the construction company or the person designated those pieces for solely and only one purpose. In other words, he's not having in his mind to use it for anything else. So those would explain, if that's the case, that's under the category of muktzeh. Muktzeh chisaron kis, that they're losing the value, the monetary value, that none. אין מבקים עצים מן הקורות ולא מן הקורה שנשברה ביום טוב. So again, you remember we just brought an example. You have a wood vessel that was broken, and now you want to use that wood pieces to heat. So if you talk about festival, now it's a different designation, and basically to heat, it's okay to do in a festival, but this wood part, it's muktzeh. So this is one of the disputations between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon. Because according to Rabbi Yehuda, what he said, that something that was muktzeh before the time, it's remained muktzeh all the time. Which means it cannot change the designation, the category that was before the holidays. So if something is set aside in advance, you cannot change it. Okay, and therefore mukim la bet Hillel ke Rabbi Yehuda, that he is more stringent in regard to muktzeh, and since we follow Rabbi Yehuda in halacha in regards to muktzeh on the festival, so therefore we go by that direction of Beit Hillel. So Rav Nachman explained that this Mishnah speaks about the chicken that was designated for egg purpose, and Beit Hillel prohibited that egg because they hold that it's that muktzeh. So again, let's make sure that we understand the migo. Migo in that understanding is, since it was in advance become a muktzeh, which means before the holidays it was set aside, that carries the prohibition for the entire holidays. So far, so good? Any questions so far? No? Good. So, Mikdei man satme lematnitim. Rabbi is Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, the one who set up the Mishnah. So, he was the one who put it together. So, he said, he put it in a way that it's not his personal opinion, but that's what everyone agrees. So even there are places that it's himself, but since there's no disputation, he puts it as a general statement, like everyone agrees. So therefore, why, when we regard to halachot Shabbat, we learn a general Mishnah and rule according to Rabbi Shimon that is more lenient when it's come to muktzeh, and we go to festival, we go by Rabbi Yehuda that is more stringent in muktzeh. Amrei, the reason for that is Shabbat de Chamira, because Shabbat we are more strict. Why? Because even ochel nefesh, even something you need for food for that day, when it's come to Shabbat, we are saying that you cannot slaughter the animal on Shabbat, even for the sake of eating it that day. So people will not denigrate the value of Shabbat, which means they not make lenient when it's the one of those muktzeh prohibition. Satam la ki Rabbi Shimon de Mekel. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi follow Rabbi Shimon that it's more lenient when it's come to muktzeh. Yom Tov dekil, because we are more lenient when it's come to a festival, because we allow a lot of things for the ochel nefesh, for the sake of eating that day. So therefore, what's happened to people? Many times you start telling people it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. People start belittled, denigrated, not value. So therefore, Satam la ki Rabbi Yehuda de Machmir. So therefore, we have to go by Rabbi Yehuda that it's more stringent. So there is a list that the Rambam tells us what the sages are more stringent in Yom Tov more than Shabbat. In general, in any area that it's a gray area, the sages afraid that people are going to denigrate the value of the holidays, they are more stringent. B'mayu kimta. How do you make the Mishnah according to Rav Nachman? Remember earlier we said that there are two categories? Here we talk about the category of the chicken that designated for what purpose? To raise eggs solely. And therefore, umishu muktzeh. So therefore, there is issue of muktzeh, according to Bet Hillel, Iyachi ademiflige bebeitza, since Beit Shammai and Bet Hillel disputed over the egg, liflegu betarnegolet. So because this chicken is for the purpose of raising the eggs and not for food, so therefore you may say that the muktzeh applies. So therefore, according to Bet Hillel, that prohibited the egg because they hold the same as Rabbi Yehuda, that the sages are very careful when it's come to muktzeh, that the chicken should be also prohibited. And according to Beit Shammai, that the sages not so much go stringent with muktzeh, so they follow Rabbi Shimon, and the chicken will not be prohibited. So why we bring disputation in regard to egg and not in regard to the mother chicken itself? So they said, so they want to show you how far Beit Shammai are lenient. Di benolad shari. So even a situation that the egg was born, Beit Shammai allowed. So if they disputed in regard to muktzeh, we didn't know that Beit Shammai allow nolad, because you may think that only muktzeh is permitted. But nolad, since a person not even know in advance that it's going to be born, so therefore Beit Shammai tells us that it's permitted, even the egg, that it's a new one. So how about you have a disputation, instead of the egg, you have the mother chicken, that to show you how far Beit Hillel are stringent. So they said, why? The muktzeh asri, because they prohibited even the chicken itself. In general, there is a rules, we should know, that the lenient are much carry strength. We said it many times. My Rebbeim used to say, to tell people it's prohibited, you don't need to be a rabbi. Everyone can say it's prohibited. To say it's permissible, you need to be a very big, you need to have a lot of knowledge to find when it's okay. So here you may say that they want to show us when it's permissible, and therefore that's the reason they go that way. But again, Rashi and Tosfot elaborate on that. Just as a vignette, Tosfot said what we said here. He said that when a person is lenient, it's easy. He doesn't need to bring a proof to what he said. But if a person is in a state of prohibition, then he said a person can say something is prohibited and doesn't need to give any explanation. Boom. It's like we're getting close to Pesach. Pesach is one of those festivals for people who wants to be stringent. It's endless. If you hear, I get a magazine not long ago about certain group of people, certain sects, that they go in Pesach so far, I meant that it's really, very far. I didn't get it. I get a magazine that said that in a certain Hasidic sect they don't drink milk because of all kind of stringencies. Or in a certain sect, if even a small tiny matzah fell in the hot soup, they throw the soup. It's all kind of certain stringencies that in a way it's sometimes endless. Here they want to show the beauty of leniency. V'niflog bitravayu. So let's see a total disputation in both the chicken and the egg. And the Mishnah should said as follows: תרנגולת העומדת לגדי ביצים. If you have a chicken that was designated for the sake of eggs, he הוא ביצתה, the chicken and the egg. בית שמאי אומרים תאכל ובית אומרים לא תאכל. בית שמאי said that you can eat it, בית הלל said no. אלא אמר רבא לעולם בתרנגולת עומד לאכילה. We go now by the first category, that this chicken was designated for what? For food. So if it's designated for food, for אוכל נפש, you allow to do it on ינטב. וביום טוב שחל להיות אחר השבת עסקינן. ומשום הכנה. Now you talk about the holiday that occurred on Sunday. So now the Beit Hillel said you cannot have hachana, meaning preparation, on Shabbat to the following Sunday. Why? Because on Shabbat it's muktzeh. So you cannot prepare from Shabbat to the following holidays. But if it's prepared on Shabbat in advance, so the only thing left is the muktzeh. וכסבר רבא כל ביצה למתיל דאידנא מאתמול גמרא לה. Rava hold that when you have an egg, it's not just the egg was born now. What happened to the egg? It was in the mother's womb yesterday. So since it was yesterday, and yesterday meaning is Shabbat, which means today is the festival, which is Sunday, and yesterday is Shabbat. So the completion of the creation of that egg was on Shabbat. It wasn't prepared in a regular day before the holidays, and therefore Beit Hillel said that it's prohibited because it's considering a set aside a muktzeh. V'Rabba letamei, Rabbi wants to prove from the Torah the prohibition of hachana, of preparation. So he basically prohibited something that was not prepared in advance. He said, the Torah tells us about the manna from heaven. They said on Friday you have lechem mishnah, you have double portion. So on Friday they have to do a hachana, hechinu, which means you need to prepare for Shabbat. Which means all the baking, cooking, all the preparation has to be before Shabbat. Because Moshe Rabbeinu said Shabbat Shabbaton, tomorrow is going to be holiday Shabbat, and therefore you cannot do anything. You have to set up everything in advance. Chol mechin leShabbat vechol mechin liyom tov. So regular day prepare for Shabbat and a holiday ve'en yom tov mechin leShabbat. But you have the issue of the festival in preparation of Shabbat. Ve'en Shabbat mechin liyom tov. You cannot prepare on Shabbat for the subsequent day on Sunday. That is a holiday. You can't do. So if you have a regular festival, regular holidays that not occurred on Sunday, so what's the issue of eating the egg that was born that festival? So he said, guess what happened to people? He said, if you let people do that, which means they eat in a regular festival, they will mix that with festival that occurred on Sunday, and because they mix it and they said, oh, I remember the last festival, it wasn't a problem. Now all of a sudden you create a new problem just because today it's Sunday? So the rabbis know that people mentality, they said, and they don't want them to be in violation of biblical law, so therefore they prohibited even a festival that not occurred on Sunday for that egg. So the Abaye asks, Shabbat de alma tishterei. So if you don't have a Friday holiday, it's only Shabbat, so what's the issue of eating that egg? The same manner, if it happens that the festival is on Saturday, also on Friday, and the following day is Shabbat, so if the egg was born in a regular Shabbat, this is rabbinic decree that prohibited in order to avoid a Saturday, the Shabbat that subsequent of Friday that was festival. Because if you allow an egg that was born in a regular Shabbat, people who are not educated will think that it's okay to eat egg that was born on Shabbat that subsequent of Friday that was festival. That's biblically prohibited. So the Gemara asks, "Umigazrina." So you're going to tell me that the sages prohibited of egg that was born in a regular Shabbat, a regular festival? והתניא, הוא learned in the Beitzah, השוחט את התרנגולת ומצא בביצים גמורות. Imagine a person slaughtered on a festival an egg, and he found there an egg that's ready for food. So Rashi here used the Klomar, and I'm using my book here to explain this Rashi. So they said, ושמרתם את משמרתי, כלומר גזרה למשמרתי. So basically, Rashi said here, מותרות לאוכלם ביום טוב, ואם איתה לגזר משום אנחנו נתלל ביומיהם. So he said, rabbis come here and have which we call a fences. I give you just the abbreviation, which means the rabbi said that because people who are not educated can mix all of that, we put fences around. So even the egg by itself is not an issue, but since people will mix that with others, such as if you take the chicken in order to eat it on a festival, and all of a sudden while you slaughter the chicken you found an egg, so what do you said? You may say, oh, what's the problem? Right? But in your mindset was only what? To eat the chicken as a food. It wasn't the egg inside the chicken. אמר לי, ביצים גמורות בימי מן, מילתא דלא שכיחא הוא, ומילתא דלא שכיחא לא גזרו ברבנן. So they said here, wait a second, if you're talking about eggs that it was with its mother's womb, that's something very rare. Sages do not go, sages are very practical, which means they don't put a decree for something that is very rare. Imagine a scenario that you are slaughtering the chicken on a festival and you want to eat it on a festival, and all of a sudden after you slaughter it you found a complete egg. That's something that is rare, and the sages not put a prohibition for something that it's so far. But again, the Shita Mekubetzet and Rabbi Akiva Eiger, there is a lot of discussion how exactly they put the boundary, what exactly the boundary is and how they put it, and we're going to continue with that tomorrow. Shulchan Aruch 442, we said that in a small side of olive bark is the minimum measure for both leavened bread and leaven, in terms of both obligation to remove them as well as the prohibition against consuming them. Now, one may slaughter an undomesticated animal or bird on a festival only if he has a earth which cover the blood. According to the Mishnah Brura, this earth must be loose. So that's the law of Kisui Adam that we said that we must do in order to not to leave it open. That's the Shulchan Aruch 498. We talk about Hagba'at Atzamot with regard to bones or shells remaining in a table after meal. If they are fit for animal consumption, they may be carried on Shabbat by hand. If not, may be removed by means of another object or by shaking the table, which may be handled due to the bread left on it. If it is a sizable amount of objectionable waste accumulates on the table, one is permitted to remove it even by hand. That's Shulchan Aruch 308. On a festival, it is prohibited to chop wood for kindling from beams that have been set aside for consumption works. That's what we said muktzeh, as they are set aside due to the monetary loss, chisaron kis. Furthermore, one may not utilize for this purpose a beam that broke on a festival, as it was set aside at twilight. That's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 501. We said that that's very important. An object that was not prepared the day before is considered muktzeh and prohibited on a festival, despite the fact that it's permitted on Shabbat, as the sages were more stringent with regard to festival to prevent people from treating with contempt. Some rabbis, like Tur and others, maintain that any muktzeh articles that are permitted on Shabbat are permitted on festival as well. But this is something that it's open to discussion. So in conclusion, ביצה שנולדה ביום טוב, that's Rambam, הלכות יום טוב, chapter 1, an egg that was laid on a festival that occurred immediately after Shabbat, or on Shabbat that occurred after festival, is prohibited until nightfall, even if the chicken was designated for food. Due to the prohibition against making preparations on Shabbat or a festival for the following days, the sages decree that this egg is likewise prohibited in every festival on Shabbat due to those cases when one holiday follow another. So it's applied to both Shabbat subsequent of festival and festival subsequent of Shabbat.
Boyachem leshuloim malachai yeshuloim malachai